How do you find a distance between 2 points? Okay, now before we get started looking at the points, let's just talk about regular numbers. What's the distance between 2 and 34? Like how do you find that really fast? So you said rightly the distance is 32. What if it was 33 and 51? What's the distance between those two numbers? If you were actually to count them all out, you would get, is it 18? You subtract those two, you get 18. So if you want to find the distance between two numbers, you just have to subtract them. Yeah? You subtract them. Okay, so does that also work for like if you had negative numbers, like if you had 5 and negative 3? What's the distance between 5 and negative 3?
Negative 8.
Okay, we know that the distance is 8. You can't have a negative distance. And if we went 5 minus negative 3, that would slash and dash, or add the opposite. You get an 8. Now, what if you went negative 3 minus 5? Well, then you get a negative 8, but you know that distances can't be negative, and so you're going to get rid of the negative and make it into a positive so that you can get positive 8. So if you want to find a distance between two numbers, you just have to subtract. So, what about these? What about the distance between these two blue points right here? How are we going to find the distance between those 2 points? Counting, well, how do I count? I mean, like, do I count how many dashes I did? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, yeah, you can't count. Yeah, you gotta think like a shape, like this shape right here. If how does that help? If that's a right triangle right there, how's that going to help us find the distance of this? Oh, the all infamous a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Some of you guys are thinking, well, how do you go from subtracting two numbers to this junk right here? Because that's a lot of stuff just to find the distance between that point and that point. Well, that comes in when we're talking about the distance right here and the distance right here. Okay, now the bottom is 4 and the side is 3. But what if we didn't know? What if we didn't know or have a picture right in front of us? What if the only thing we had was 7, 1 and 3, 4? What if we only had these two coordinates? And those two coordinates stand for this point, that's 7, 1, and this point, which is 3, 4. How would we find this number right here? How would we find 4 if we just had these two coordinates? That's correct. 7 minus 3. Because this is 3 right here, and this is 7 right here. If we wanted to find the distance between these two, we just have to subtract. 7 minus 3. Now, the 7 minus 3 represents the 4. The 4 represents either the A or the B. And so, what do we have to do to 7 minus 3? We have to square it. And then we're going to say plus. And the whole thing in here is we're trying to get to this right here. We want to see what this side is right here, which is our C. Okay, so now we need the distance of this line. Okay, so how are we going to get to 3 if we only had these two coordinates? Well, the y is 1 here and the y is 4 there. And so you have 1 all the way up to 4. So what's the distance between here and here? Well, how would we find that out? 4 minus 1. That'll give us a 3. Now this one we also must square because that's going to be our b. We squared that, and that equals c squared. So we put the c squared right there, and that will find us the distance from this point to this point. What if I wanted to write this without the squared on the c? What would I do? How would I get rid of the squared? Yeah, you would square root it. So if we square root both sides, this is what our problem would look like. 7 minus 3 squared plus 4 minus 1 squared, and we square root that whole thing, and that equals c. Does that look familiar to you guys? Now, you guys have done this before. This is also known as the distance formula. The distance formula is d equals x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. See, you got your c is your d, and then you got your two x's subtracting. We got the 7 minus 3, the two x's subtracting. Then the y's subtracting, the 4 minus 1, and then we just have to, do our thing. So how long is this line right here? Let's see, we got 4 squared plus, what is that, 3 squared? That equals c. So that's 16 plus 9. Oh, it works out all nice and pretty. We have 25 the square root of 25, and then so we get c equals 5. And so the distance between this point and this point is 5. And I'm showing you guys step by step. That's why it looks like there's so much work right there. But what would be the fun if you weren't challenged with this? Let's algebraize this. Let's give ourselves a problem where we have to use some algebra. It says the distance between 2 points is 9. One of the points is 5, 1, and the other point is at negative 4. What is the y value for negative 4? X equals negative 4. Okay, so here we go. We're going to use the distance formula, which is what we just did. So we got d equals... Oh wait, we know what d is. What is the d? 9 equals, okay. We have the square root of a bunch of stuff. Now we subtract the x's first, and so we have 5, and the other x is negative 4. 5 minus negative 4, because those are 2 points. Our 2 points are 5 and 1, and the other point is negative 4, and we don't know the y. So we're subtracting the two x's right there. Don't forget to square them. We have to add the difference between the y's, so it's y minus, or 1 minus y, and we square that. Now let's do some simplification. Alright, here we go. We got 9 equals, this is going to be 9 squared, and we got a square root right there, and then we have a 1 minus y squared. Okay, how do we get rid of this squared? The square root. How do you get rid of that square root? What's the inverse operation of square root? Yeah, we can square it. If we square this side, they will cancel each other out because they're opposites. They're inverse operations. But whatever you do to one side, you must do the other side. So we have to square the 9 also. So we have 81 right here. And this is going to equal that 9 squared plus 1 minus y squared. 9 squared. What is 9 squared? You guys know that one. 81. Okay, so what do I do to solve this? Subtract 81. So if I subtract 81 from both sides, I get 0. That equals 1 minus y squared. Okay. How do I solve this? Now there's 2 ways to do it. Actually 3 ways. The first way is you can multiply this out. If you multiply this out, you're going to have to solve it using the zero property or solve it using the quadratic formula. But because it's already a perfect square, there's a different way you can do it. How do I get rid of this squared? You square root it. You use the inverse operation. And so we square root the other side. What's the square root of 0? Well, that's just 0. So we have 1 minus y. So we subtract 1 from both sides, and then we get negative 1 equals negative y. What does y equal? Huh? Positive 1. Okay, so in this case we got lucky. We only got one answer. Negative 4, 1. Alright, so that's a distance formula. That's how you find the distance between 2 points.